close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 p.m. and you're watching GB News. I'm Miriam Cates. Coming up in the next hour on Dewbs & Co. The chilling New Orleans attack has been confirmed as an act of terrorism. But with authorities now believing the attacker acted alone, are we facing an increased risk of these lone wolf terror attacks here in the UK? And Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips has refused calls for a public inquiry into the shocking child sexual abuse perpetrated by gangs of mostly Pakistani men. As the details of these shocking crimes spreads across the world on social media, we'll be asking if former Home Secretary Suella Braverman is right to call for the abusers to be deported. And the Secretary of State for Technology has said it's unlikely that the UK will follow Australia's lead in banning social media for under-16s, despite increasing evidence that time online is having a serious negative impact on childhood. We'll be asking why leading children's charities don't support social media restrictions for children. And as hospital treatment for obesity quadruples in a decade, is Britain's obesity epidemic killing the NHS? And what's the answer? Fat jabs or just more self-control? And joining me tonight for the next hour, I've got my panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, alongside former Jeremy Corbyn advisor, James Schneider. But first, the latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you very much and good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. Well, a truck attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day has now been confirmed as an act of terrorism. Authorities say 15 people were killed, including the attacker, Shamsud-Din Jabbar, who died in a shootout with police. An IS flag was found in his vehicle, and while no group has so far claimed responsibility, supporters of the Islamic State are widely celebrating online. The FBI is now reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance footage and over 400 public tip-offs. The identities of the victims, including a former Princeton football star and an aspiring nurse, are still being confirmed. Meanwhile, a deadly explosion outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas is also being investigated, but FBI say there is no definitive link to the incident in New Orleans. Well, that blast caused by a Tesla Cybertruck filled with fuel canisters and fireworks sadly killed the driver and injured 7 others, though their identities remain undisclosed. The FBI's director confirmed the investigation is now underway, but says it's still in its very early stages. In the wake of the attack, incoming President Donald Trump has taken to Truth Social, blaming the nation's open borders, but vowing to stop the chaos under his leadership. Here, a group of 20 Labour councillors has quit the party, accusing Sir Keir Starmer of abandoning traditional Labour values. The group from Broxtowe Borough Council have formed a breakaway independence group with 100 members and a county councillor also leaving Labour. In response, the remaining Labour councillors in Broxtowe say they're extremely disappointed, but pledge to continue working for local residents. Well, the council's leader, Milan Radulovic, has criticised Labour's policies, including the recent means testing of winter fuel payments.
And my conscience says that I am a locally elected representative. I've been a Broxtowe Borough Councillor since 1986, I've been leader for 22 years, and I've dedicated a large part of my life to the service of local people. And to see those freedoms, to see that opportunity to represent those local communities and fight for our share of resources, being totally ignored by a centralist control who do nothing but protect the establishment and the elite, who hoard all the wealth, and see what privileges we do get taken away from us disgusts me.
Kemi Badenoch is calling for a national inquiry into the UK's rape gang scandal, saying that justice for victims is long overdue. Her plea comes after Labour's safeguarding minister insisted it was for Oldham Council alone to decide whether to launch an investigation into exploitation between 2011 and 2014. Even Elon Musk has attacked that decision, claiming that Jess Phillips deserves prison, he said, and accused Sir Keir Starmer of inaction as Director of Public Prosecutions before leading the Labour Party. However, the government says it is working to implement recommendations from the 2022 independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and pledges to strengthen the law to protect victims. Suspected people smugglers could soon face travel bans, phone restrictions and social media blackouts under new government proposals. Ministers say they're introducing interim serious crime prevention orders to impose immediate restrictions while courts review full orders. The move follows a sharp rise in small boat crossings last year, with over 7,000 more migrants arriving than the previous 12 months. Labour says the powers will tackle vile gang networks, but the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp told us it won't make any difference.
This is the same government, of course, the same Labour Party, who voted against life sentences for those very same gangs when they were in opposition. And on their watch, since the election, now 6 months ago, illegal immigration across the Channel has gone up by 29% compared to last year. And I think it was a huge mistake of Labour to scrap the Rwanda deterrent before it even started. The first flight was due to take off on the 24th of July, and Labour cancelled it before that plane had a chance to leave. And I think if that had started, then we would see the numbers dramatically reducing.
And the UK is bracing for a blast of Arctic air with cold weather alerts across England and snow forecast for much of the country this weekend. Met Office warnings for snow and ice span England, Wales and Scotland, with Saturday expected to be the coldest day as temperatures plunge below freezing. And severe snowfall could bring up to 40 centimetres in higher areas like the Pennines, causing potential travel chaos and power cuts. How wonderful. Those are the latest headlines. For now, I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and joining me until 7 o'clock, I've got my panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and former Jeremy Corbyn advisor, James Schneider. And always, as always, remember to get your views in at gbnews.com. Your say. I'll be reading out your opinions and your views throughout the show. Now, today's main news. In the last couple of hours, the FBI has confirmed that the New Orleans attack was an act of terrorism. The FBI Deputy Assistant Director also told the media that as it stands, they believe the New Orleans attacker was a lone wolf with no definitive link to the Cybertruck blast in Las Vegas. The FBI has named the suspect as US citizen Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar, who previously served in the US Army. The authorities have also said an Islamic State group flag was found in the vehicle. So, Kelvin, obviously, we thought for some time that this might be a coordinated attack. There might be others involved. There might even be a link with this other attack. But it seems now that it's another lone wolf operator. Do you think we're in danger of copycat attacks here in the UK? We've obviously seen one in Germany recently.
Yeah, well, possibly, because remember, ISIS have been chased out of the Middle East. They have no land anymore, right? Their idea of some kind of state within a state has turned out to be destroyed by actually democratic forces. And the only place that they are big in, actually, funnily enough, is parts of Africa. And so, however, the way that ISIS now work is they operate through the online world. And this kind of, quotes, success, that, as they see it, will undeniably lead to other nasty people of one particular extreme religion actually pursuing us for some time out. And so we've all got to be aware, but I'm not sure what you can do about this kind of stuff. But what it does lead is to the other thing, which it leads to tensions within our communities, as one community blames, in this case, blames the Muslim community for killing them. I find that absolutely normal and straightforward, but it does lead to a tension, especially in a place like London or Bradford or actually Oldham or Rochdale or any of these other things. And we're coming to another story coming up shortly in which people just don't know how to react when they see people dressed in a certain way and wondering, are they on our side or are they on the other side?
Some would say that's unfounded prejudice, but others would say, well, it's well-founded given the nature of some of these attacks. But, James, is it even that simple anymore? Because sometimes some of these attackers have been recent converts to Islam, for example, or they've got all their inspiration from the internet and never actually spoken or been in contact with anybody in person who's screwing them into terrorism.
There's often the sort of zeal of the convert in some of these attacks. Some of the notable terrorist attackers over the last 20, 25 years, a number of them have been converts. So that does happen. And online radicalisation happens, not just of Muslim terrorists, but of Christian terrorists and other types of terrorists as well. I remember the terrorist attack in Finsbury Park in 2017 when a man, Darren Osborne, a far-right terrorist, drove a van into a mosque, killing one person. And he had been radicalised online in a very short period of time. So we can see some familiar patterns.
No, you're absolutely
right. And often you get, and it seems to be the case in this guy's life, you know, when there's a real strain in something in the personal life, he seemed to be having financial troubles, going through a divorce and so on. That, coupled with online radicalisation, can lead to these types of horrific
You're absolutely
attacks.
right, but I think sometimes too much effort is made to draw equivalence between far-right terrorism, which of course is dangerous, but is nowhere near to the scale of extremist Islamist terrorism, which is the predominant force now behind terrorist attacks in Europe.
Yes, I mean, you know, there's an old phrase which is, you know, not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists appear to be Muslims.
It's not true, though, is it?
No, but the majority.
Well, take the Germany one, for example.
Yes,
he was
that is true, but you're naming one. Actually, in our country alone, you have seen some shocking outrages in our country, and they have been, by and large, 99.9% the response of one particular religious following. And so I think we must deal with the facts about this kind of thing. ISIS, right, are a danger to us all. But the other problem is that they are no longer an armed force, so they're not going to be coming across the channel in order to kill us in that way. But what they will hope to do is to come across somebody sitting alone in a bedroom, probably a 17 or 18-year-old, and trying to encourage that person to go out there. And so the question really is, you have to rely then, and actually prevent is helpful in that respect. We have to rely on the parents, the grandparents, and the families to actually go and shop these kids before they actually get going. What is unusual about this guy is that he's much older, right? The idea that you're in your 40s and doing it is very unusual. Normally, it is the child which is encouraged.
Yeah. But going back to this, you know, the equivalence of different terrorist motivations, one of the criticisms of the PREVENT strategy by William Shawcross recently was that it was overly focused on the far right because of the the referrals, I should say, that the PREVENT strategy was getting from teachers and social workers. They were picking up on boys going on right-wing websites or watching Andrew Tate, which might be completely unsavoury but isn't necessarily the same kind of threat. Do you think there's some sort of rebalancing that needs to happen here?
Well, I don't think it can be done through PREVENT. I think the policy is fundamentally ill thought out. I don't think you can make teachers the front line of defence against violent criminal radicalisation, the types of radicalisation where people go and try to take lives. So I think that, you know, PREVENT has been, there's lots of complaints it's been used in a discriminatory way against Muslim students. And you're saying the same thing, those who've been shopped for things which may be unsavoury. But you know, you're allowed to do unsavoury things, what you're not allowed to do is criminal things. So I don't think I don't think Prevent is going to give us the solution. And also it puts a huge number of people on watch lists. And the percentage of people on watch lists versus the percentage of people that really need to be watched. Let's take, for example, the Manchester Arena bomber. Yeah. Who was known to the security services, who it seems might have been helped by the security services to go to Libya to fight in 2011, whose family was well known, who it seems the security services helped bring his family back from Libya. So I think rather than trying to massively expand the net, we should be looking at what is actually happening with those people that really are.
So if we didn't have a version of Prevent, how would we know what was going on in communities that may not have our best interests at heart? It's going to be a guess? Are we simply never going to watch anybody? Are we never going to hang around the corners hoping that we can find out? How's it all going to work?
So two things. I'm obviously going to push back on the idea that there are these communities that don't have our good interests at heart. I think the vast majority of communities in Britain have the general collective interest at heart. Prevent is basically getting teachers to report on their students. That's the main thing. That's not the only way in which the security services are able to gather intelligence.
I agree. But they need to get facts. They need to get facts wherever they can,
of course, right. And that man who blew up children attending a conference hadn't been referred to them because he'd said something, his drawing hadn't been very nice in colouring class at school. It was because he was part of a family that were politically connected to an Islamist network who wanted to go and fight in Libya, and in fact were helped to do so.
But we have a I'm not going to go into it, but we have a particularly gruesome case coming up shortly in which schools were able to point out that the person involved was extreme. I won't go into that case because it's live, but so schools do have a role.
Yeah, and of course we don't know how many plots the security services are foiling that never actually make it into attacks, whether they are lone wolves or not. Anyway, better leave it there. But coming up after the break, as Labour refuses to launch an inquiry into the scourge of grooming gangs that has plagued our country for decades, are they failing the very same women and girls that they've promised to protect? Don't go anywhere. This is Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Britain's Royal Collection of Art is one of the most important and largest in the world. And it's also one of the last great European royal collections to remain intact. And built up over many centuries, it has extraordinary depth. And curators have delved into its riches to produce an exhibition of Italian drawings between 1450 and 1600. There are household names here: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Some of the drawings are complete works in themselves. Some are studies for images that would appear in much larger pieces. And some are anatomical studies which enabled these artists to draw the human form in all its perfection.
This is the earliest drawing in the exhibition of around 1450, and it's made by Fra Angelico, the great Florentine painter. It may seem an obvious thing to say, but we only have drawings like this if they have survived. And these drawings were not seen at the time as works of art. They were workshop studies. They were as functional as a hammer or a paintbrush, if you like, in the workshop. But the fact that a drawing would survive from 1450 to the present day shows that first it was useful, and it was a work that would have been referred to constantly in the artist's studio, and only later was it valued by collectors as an exemplar of the artist's genius, if you like, the way in which we might think of it today. So a drawing like this, which is in almost perfect condition, has got a history of being valued for different reasons from when it was produced to the present.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and former Jeremy Corbyn advisor, James Schneider. Now, the government is again under fire after refusing to hold a public inquiry into the historic sexual abuse by grooming gangs in Oldham. Elon Musk has waded in, attacking the decision as disgraceful, while Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, has said that a full national inquiry into rape gangs was long overdue. Now, Jess Phillips, that's Labour's safeguarding minister, has insisted it's for Oldham Council alone to decide whether to launch an investigation into the alleged exploitation between 2011 and 2014. Meanwhile, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman has told this channel, GB News, that those convicted should be deported if at all possible. Now, James, coming to you first, of course, this is absolutely horrific scandal, and it's now making international headlines. Elon Musk has got involved. Clearly, there's been a lot of discussion about why this abuse was allowed to go on for so long. And a key factor seems to be that many of the officials who were aware of the abuse were afraid of being called racist or stoking community tensions. Do you think that's a fair assessment of what went wrong?
In some of the cases, that's what I think the J review found into one of them. Not all of these cases of these grooming gangs involve ethnic minorities, so it's not always the case. I find what's happened today, all of it, really quite perplexing. Pretty much from all of the people involved. I mean, let's start with Jess Phillips. Oldham Council write to the Home Office asking for an inquiry, and rather than saying, we think you should do it, we'll help you do that, says, no, it's for you to do it, which seems a kind of weird tone-deaf way to do it. Then, obviously, Elon Musk and him, flaming the whole thing with basically having zero knowledge of it at all. Then the Kemi Badenoch coming out and saying we need to have a national inquiry. There was one 2 years ago. It came up with a whole series of recommendations. It landed on Suella Braverman's desk when she was Home Secretary. None of them have been implemented, not by the last government, not by this government, which includes some things which seem to me very sensible and not difficult to put into law, like the mandatory reporting in certain professions and voluntary things of allegations of child sexual exploitation, the creation of a child protection agency to go and look at this stuff, a single set of core data, all sorts of things which would be useful. And then to have Suella Braverman, who seems to me the most unserious politician in Britain, saying that we need to deport if anyone's a foreign criminal, when she should know as Home Secretary that you can deport foreign criminals if they have been sentenced to 12 months or more. It's in an act that was passed Parliament in 2007.
That's not always happening, not just in this case, but in others.
So every single bit of it seems to me completely bizarre. The government should be, as the previous government should have done, getting on with implementing these recommendations. We've already had one inquiry.
To be fair to the previous government, they did set up a grooming gangs task force about 18 months ago. Its first year was very successful, arrested hundreds and hundreds of people. You could say it's too little too late, but it's not true that nothing was done.
That's surely the point. The Tories saying anything about any of this is totally ridiculous, right? It all happened on their watch, one way and another.
Well, it started well before. But...
Yeah, it started before, but they could have clamped down on it. Nobody showed any interest. Why? And this is why. reform is doing so well in these towns. They show no interest in it because, you know, people like Cameron and co, you know, they couldn't find Oldham on a foggy day. You know, let's be honest about it. They're not interested in them. And Rochdale, oh, really? Are you joking? I'm not going up there.
Well, I think that's yeah.
All right, you were an MP up there, right? And you will have seen the latest polling, which says that if your old constituency came up, and every other red wall, none of it would go to Tory. It would all go to Reform. So let's be honest about all this. There are other aspects of it which I was rather taken actually with. I agree with you. How much time Elon Musk has in his day is beyond me. Hold on a second.
He's an expert in every legal system in the world.
Well, not only that. While I'm doing this, I've got SpaceLink over here. I've got this incredible thing where I can get a rocket go into a cone like that. It's incredible. And I run the world's biggest electric car business. Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to get stuck into Oldham.
You're right. I mean, some of what he said.
But he did make one good point, I thought, which was that our old chum, Sir Keir Starmer, right? You're not necessarily a friend of yours, and definitely not a friend of mine, so we're united on this moment, right? Actually was heading the CPS from 2008, I think, to 2013, right in the wheelhouse of this issue. And, of course, he would have been part of the reason why none of these people ever came to trial.
Well, he certainly was the DPP, but you don't need the DPP's permission to charge.
No, but
he did actually instigate the Rochdale inquiry in 2012, so I don't think it's fair to completely implicate.
All I'm saying is that I know, right, because I got an FOI on Starmer's time at the CPS in relation to Fayed. OK? I pursued it, honestly. If you want to watch Yes Minister at Work, watch an FOI go into the CPS asking, was Starmer ever CC'd into any particular note about Fayed not being progressed with a sexual abuse charge, right? Eventually they said, we have no information on this issue. And that's the end of it. And anyway, my point about this is that the idea that Phillips would turn around and say, yes, we should do this, just in case there was any shadow at all across the Prime Minister. She's never going to do this. So I agree with you. In some way, I agree with James. Actually, this is just a flim-flam. And why it's happened, I don't know. But any time Elon Musk gets involved, then you can expect there to be headlines.
Yes, exactly. And one thing he has done, whether you agree with how he's done it or not, is massively raise the profile of what's happened. And it is shocking. We should be appallingly shocked. And I think one of the angles on this, it pertains to what you said, Kelvin, about the places where it has happened and the sense that they don't matter.
OK, when you were an MP...
My constituency was actually very different demographically. It was rural ex-steel town. So this was, it's very different demographics to
Did you ever feel that Westminster, though, had, or the South generally, had any interest or any knowledge of your constituency?
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's not an easy question to answer, but was there a sense that post-industrial North has been left behind for decades? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's part of what we're getting at here. But what I really want to think about here, the particular children involved, they were white girls, they were mostly in care, so they didn't have the benefit of living with parents who'd got a vested interest in protecting them and reporting any safeguarding issues. And they were poor. And one of the things, if you look back through historic child abuse scandals, whether that's children down mines, child prostitutes on the streets of Victoria in England, sadly, when children are poor, it takes a lot longer for society to take notice.
Completely true. And it's completely true that if these kids were from well-off backgrounds, then we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. Things would be very different. Lots of the greatest abuses happen with huge power imbalances. You see some very wealthy people or very powerful people, Epstein and so on, who are able to, it seems, get away with things.
Prince Andrew,
it seems like they're able to get away with things for a very long time because of their power, and it goes the other way down. And I think that that's something that we will have to think about. One thing I just want to slightly tweak what you were saying about the post-industrial towns in the north for 40 years being left behind. I don't think it's being left behind. I think it's been a deliberate experiment. It's been a deliberate experiment on deindustrialisation and then replacing that with a different type of work which has ripped the heart out of a whole load of places.
Why aren't we talking about, actually, the abuse being carried out by one group of men, Well, one particular group of men. By the way, if this had been a collection of white men, can you imagine?
No,
Imagine the scandal, especially from the left.
And I think that's the key factor.
And nobody mentions it.
Yeah, well, I think...
Do you think there's a problem with Pakistani men abusing these children? Because it's not just one town, is it? There's about 5 towns they've been running riot over. And you know, there was in Oldham, I think, one white guy against 8 or 9 from a Pakistani. Is that me being racist, or is this me being factual?
So I think there's a problem with any group of men, and in these particular cases there have been groups of Pakistani origin men, but there have also been gangs of white men in Torbay, in Derby, in Bristol. So this is, if we just turn this into supposedly an ethnic or a cultural problem, firstly, that's factually not the case.
But didn't the last report actually say that there was a problem with Pakistani men?
Yeah. I think it's the Rochdale report said that some people within the council and the police were, this wasn't the word they used, but squeamish about going forward because of the identity of the men. Now, that doesn't mean that there is a problem with Pakistani or Pakistani British people at large. Far from it. We're talking about specific cases of horrific abuse, and there should, you know, all these recommendations, including a single set of core data and so on, so that we can have this conversation in a factual way. Because, you know, you're saying if there was a white gang, it would be all over the news. Actually, there hasn't been. You know, Torbay, Derby, Bristol, these ones weren't all over the news.
I think we're going to have to leave it there, but I think certainly, at the very least, one of the reasons that it wasn't reported and highlighted enough was people were afraid.
Including the journalists.
Including journalists and politicians and all sorts. And we mustn't forget the role of Charlie Peters, journalist for this channel, who has been absolutely instrumental in bringing these allegations to light and continuing the investigation, even when many other journalists wouldn't touch it. Now, I must read this statement tonight from the Labour Party, who said child sexual abuse and exploitation are the most horrendous crimes, and the Home Office supports police investigations and independent inquiries to get truth and justice for victims. We have supported both the National Overarching Inquiry into Child Abuse, which reported in 2022, and local independent inquiries and reviews, including in Telford, Rotherham and Greater Manchester. Labour, in opposition, called for and supported the National Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse under Professor Alexis Jay, which concluded in 2022. The Labour government is now working at pace to implement recommendations, including introducing the duty to report. Now, coming up, as the government rules out an Australian-style social media ban for under-16s, should our children's charities be doing more to protect vulnerable youngsters? This is Dewbs & Co with Miriam Cates, only on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cold one out there this evening. Is going to be a hard frost by morning across much of the country. Further snow coming in across northern Scotland. Strong winds means blizzards as the snow peppers through the Northern Isles. Easing for a time here, but spreading down into the mainland of Scotland. We could see several centimetres in some places, and with the showers further west and temperatures tumbling, that may well lead to some icy conditions for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. Largely dry for England and Wales. Clear skies means it will be a cold start to Friday. The strong winds really blowing in the showers over northern Scotland through the night and still into the morning, so a Met Office snow and ice warning in place here, say several centimetres in some locations. Further west, it's more rain at low levels that we'll see, but with temperatures close to freezing, it could be icy over western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, even into northwest England as the showers come in here. Elsewhere, it's a frosty but generally sunny start to Friday. As we go through the day, I think we'll see the snow showers easing a little bit. A mixture of rain and sleet showers coming into Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England. Still some snow flurries coming into northeastern parts of Scotland. Still very windy here as well, and that wind really bringing a chill. A few scattered showers for North Wales, but a good chunk of the Midlands, South Wales, southern England, eastern England staying dry. Feeling cold though, particularly in that wind in the east. Temperatures in single figures. Another frosty night on Friday night. Again, potentially quite icy on Saturday morning. Again, a good chunk of the country looking dry and fine, but a change down to the southwest weather system moving in. That'll bring some rain initially, but as this weather system hits the colder air, we could see some heavy snow for a time on Saturday. Probably not lasting too long across the south, but as it spreads into the Midlands, Wales, northern England, parts of Scotland, that snow could really build up as we head into Sunday. Freezing rain is an extra hazard as well, something to keep an eye on this weekend.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Tyne and Wear, a few miles to the north of Newcastle. The A189 remains shut in Dudley and Westmoor, just off the Finders roundabout. Emergency repair works are underway after a water main burst. In Cheshire, about a mile south of Wilmslow, the A34 remains shut between the Never Alderley roundabout and Alderley Edge of the Harden Park roundabout because of flooding. And in Oxfordshire, the M40 is partly blocked southbound about a mile after the Banbury exit, junction 11. A lorry is currently on fire. There are long queues on the M32 heading into Bristol. The motorway's down to a single lane from junction 2 to 3 because of an accident with long queues back onto the M4. Avanti West Coast running to reduce service across their network because of industrial action today. So that means into and out of Euston, far fewer trains, of course. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates. And keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin McKenzie, and former Jeremy Corbyn advisor, James Schneider. Now, a social media ban for under-16s is highly unlikely. That's the latest line from Technology Secretary Peter Kyle. He's now distanced himself from suggestions that we here in Britain should copy the idea, which has recently been approved by the Australian government. Kyle says that kids themselves want to be made safer online, but were opposed to an outright ban. The Labour minister previously hinted that an Aussie-style clampdown was on the table, but he's now told the Sun newspaper, "I don't have any plans to ban social media for under-16s." So, should charities like Childline and SPCC Barnardo's be actually pushing back against the government and demanding more restrictions, or do you think that the government's got the right line on this? Let kids be better educated, etc.
Yeah, I think it would be madness to do it. I don't think it would work. I hesitate to see. I could see the kids all their parents giving them phones in the house. It's almost like a plaything anyway, and it's an important part of communication.
Hang on, let's be clear what we're talking about. We're not talking about a smartphone ban. We're talking about social media age restrictions. So just like you can't open a bank account till you're 18, you wouldn't be able to open a social media account till you're 16.
They'll have other phones, and the parents won't take part in it. And there are plenty of things online which, you know, are corrupting.
OK,
right?
But let's leave aside whether or not it's possible. This is what the Australian government are going to seek to find out. If it was possible, do you think children should be prevented from going on social media?
No, I don't. Okay. Actually, I'm being hostile to that idea, and I'd like to see how this actual idea works out in the long run. So I think Labour are right to say leave it. And if it turns out to be a dramatic success, and that the kids of Australia are either, you know, not as mad as most of the kids appear to be over here, then we should adopt it, right? And until then, I would look upon Australia as a test case for it.
OK, James?
So the problem with social media for kids seems to be borne out in lots of mental health issues, anxiety, depression. Rates are extremely high for kids and also for attention spans. So there's a clear case where this product, and that's what it is, it's a product, is doing some harm. And some of the platforms are already doing a version of what I'm about to say, which is they have youth accounts, you can have time limited and so on. And I think that's a good way to go, and there should be more of it. And rather than talking it down, Kyle should be saying maybe not we're going to have an outright ban, but we're going to speak to every platform. We're going to have age restrictions. There's a number of hours you can do per day. Now, Kelvin's right that kids will get round it. Kids get round everything. I mean, I got round whatever the thing is of the day when I was a kid. But there's a difference between having to get around something to use it a bit and something being totally socially normalised.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it is important for kids growing up for it not to be socially normalised. One, to be online constantly, which is very anxious-making, and two, to have your head in your phone the whole time. These are two things which aren't good for kids and aren't good for society, so there's definitely a role for the government to step in to regulate these companies, because they need the interest of the social media companies is to just have people scrolling for as long as humanly possible. That does not coincide with the interests of children. So that means you need to have some kind of regulation to make that less... Okay. No, it's not going to be neat and perfect every time, Kelvin, but we need to be moving in that direction.
So here we are. You're 16 years old. Hey, suddenly, here we go. Insta, bloody Snapchat. We're all going to go. The suggestion that your mental health right, won't be as damaged from 16 onwards to 21 and 25 as it might have been between, we'll say, 11 and 12 or whatever age you went on it is ridiculous.
No, it's not. You're completely wrong, because that's not how child brain development works.
I am saying you will be as at risk from 16 onwards as you will have been.
No, if you're having it in your formative years, it's going to change. It's the same thing as smoking, right? When I was a kid, smoking was at 16. I started smoking when I was 14. Of course, you're able to get these things, but I couldn't go around smoking in the street normally. It wasn't normalised, etc., etc. And this is the same equivalent with this stuff.
What advantage? Go on, you seem to be proselytising towards this. What advantage do you think between the ages, I don't know, 11 and 12 and 16, we'll say on this case, by not going on Snapchat?
Because
what is it that you
your
hope?
brain is so much less developed and able to resist the temptation to scroll continuously, and it's almost also a lot less mature in understanding what the risks are. So, for example, if you got a text...
But that's called parenting, isn't that? Parenting?
It is partially parenting, but it's called natural brain development. Why do we say a 17-year-old can drive a car and a 12-year-old can't? Because a 17-year-old has the mental ability to judge speed and distance that a 12-year-old just doesn't have. That's just a biological fact. Your brain is not fully developed till you're 25. And that's why if you come across beheadings and pornography and requests to send nude images when you're 12, you are much less likely to resist that, however well educated
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Well, where are the stats on that? I don't follow.
OK, so the Children's Commission, there's extensive research on it, but the Children's Commission did a very good report last year. The average age to come across hardcore pornography is 12. That's the average age. So by the time you're 17 or 18, almost everybody has seen violent pornography. The problem is it's so bespoke. So people our age get sent adverts for the National Trust or kitten videos. If you go on Twitter and you're a 15-year-old boy, you'll be sent pornography within minutes. This is the problem. Social media is not, some kind of neutral space. It is feeding children with harmful material.
Right. Well, I'm sure that there are plenty of things for social media to be blamed for, and obviously spending time online scrolling for hours on end is obviously bad for you. I say, once you start there, so you have that cliff edge, I'm free now, I'm going to be on it, it will have exactly the same effect.
For alcohol and tobacco and sex and driving, don't we?
Yeah, I completely agree. And maybe you don't have it as a cliff edge. Maybe you have it phased in. Maybe you say you can have a child-restricted Facebook account that you can go on for an hour, an hour a day when you're 13, and it changes to something different when you're 16. You can do something which gets people used to the fact that this is a way in which that we engage with each other now that doesn't damage.
The great thing we got now, James, and you, sorry, is that we have got Australia. We have a test case now, and honestly, if you guys are right, I wouldn't honestly stand in the way of that. They turn out to have substantial advantages for their children. We should do that, but I am massively in favour of Labour saying not for us now, and let's see how Australia gets on.
Indeed. Well, I think that's a very good point, and hopefully it will be clear sooner rather than later. And it'll be very interesting to see what technology they employ to actually verify people's ages, because that's still very much in its early stages. Anyway, still to come, as it's revealed that the NHS obesity treatment has quadrupled in hospitals in a decade. Is Britain becoming too fat to function? This is Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates, only on GB News.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Cloudy skies across eastern parts of Europe, including some showers for southern parts of Italy and also parts of Greece, and also some rain and strong winds affecting the west. This will move into Madeira later on Saturday, also affecting northern parts of Portugal, western parts of France too. More in the way of sunshine across central parts of the Mediterranean, but cloudier further east, with a risk of showers across southern parts of Italy and also the Greek islands too. And more in the way of sunshine next week, with the best of the temperatures across Madeira.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up. And as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it, do you start to go a bit sort of, what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Literally, like at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or, you know, that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but, you know, it was,
You can,
tough.
but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hot house with
no,
people you don't like very much?
If you're sort of, you know, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, you know, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, you know, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've still got Kelvin and James with me here in the studio. Now, the amount of NHS hospital treatment for obese patients has quadrupled in a decade, new statistics show. Official figures have revealed almost 1.9 million hospital episodes of treatment for patients with a diagnosis of obesity in 2023-24, which is up from just under 500,000 back in 2013-14. Experts said the stats were a tragic reflection of the failure of successive governments to tackle Britain's obesity epidemic. So, James, this is a difficult time to tackle it after Christmas, when I'm sure we've all been overindulging, but this is a serious health and economic problem, isn't it?
It's a terrible problem, and it's not just a terrible problem for our NHS, which clearly it is. It's a huge problem for lives of millions of people. The health risks associated and the lower welfare that people have, and I think, you know, we've got a couple of issues that we need to tackle. One, how do we get people to have more exercise and more active lives? So there you're talking about making sure that sport in school, there's facilities that people can go to, public campaigns about getting people to exercise and go to the gym and so on and so forth. And then food, incredibly important. We have a huge amount of food that is not nutritional at all, the ultra-processed food, and we've been extremely slow to act against it. We do move against other things which are bad for our health. And in some ways, food is a medicine, and if you're putting in something which is a bad medicine, bad for you, into your body, it's going to have negative outcomes. And I think we've been very, very slow to act. I mean, there's been things about putting information on packaging, and that's some of it. But actually taking action and saying that supermarkets can only sell a certain percentage of food that's bad for you, that it can't be advertised in certain ways. We need to do all of these things while at the same time making healthier options possible for people.
People just don't want to do exercise. What made me laugh was the 2012 Olympics, which was a fantastic success.
Yeah.
Fantastic success, right? Actually, the number of people actually taking part in sport actually went down. It told me everything I needed to know. So the answer is people don't want to exercise. They do like bad foods, and for some inexplicable reason, they do like being fat. OK, so we have to deal with the reality of that. And the reality of that is, in my wider family, there is virtually nobody I know who is now not on Ozempic or Ozempic-likes. And, you know, it is astonishing, right? Literally, the people I know, they've lost 2 stone and 3 stone. They look like different people. One of my relatives, she could hardly walk. It was painful on her knees, right? She loses the 3 stone, right? The knee pain has gone. The knee pain is gone, and she's walking 5 kilometres and doing everything, and it's had such a good effect on her in her general sense. Yeah. So, look, let's face the reality. These weight loss jabs are miracle drugs because actually they stop you wanting to drink, and various other rather curious aspects can also possibly be helpful with cancer. I'm not here as a PR for them. I've just seen it happen within my wider family. And on that basis, we have to face that people are lazy and they don't want to do the good stuff, and therefore we have got to help them in another way.
Can I come back in on that? OK, Ozempic might be part of the solution. I don't know. It's great that it's worked for members of your family. I'm perfectly willing to believe that's part of the solution. People have too little time. That's the main problem. It's not laziness. People in this country are overstretched and overworked and find things...
Overworked? James,
it's definitely... It's definitely... For most people who are trying to raise kids, work a job, feed the kids, feed themselves, get to supermarket, worrying about the bills, worrying about the all of that stuff, the thing that they lack is time. And what exercise and good food...
Yeah, take time.
If you have time, you can do it. If you have time after work to go and play football, you might go and play football. If you don't have that time because you've got to take another shift, then you won't. You might spend half an hour making a meal for your family. If you get home from work at a reasonable time, you can do so. But you can't otherwise. So rather than just saying everyone is lazy, I think the object of all of our policies, I think, should be about maximising the freedom that we all have, and one of them is time and
James,
stress.
Obesity rates are actually at the highest, some of the highest levels in unemployed people who you'd think would have more time. If it was just about time, I'm not sure...
Yes, but that might be to do with depression and other things as well, which are highly correlated.
Which is ultra-processed foods, and there's increasing evidence that actually some of the techniques that food companies use to make ultra-processed foods do things that suppress your natural feeling of being full. So the fact that foods are softer so you don't have to chew them, so you don't feel full, or the fact that they've got more
Is that true? Are you saying that there are manufacturers in our country who are trying
Oh, no, they're all international.
Oh, right.
But of course there are.
Actually to make us eat more unhealthy.
Of course they are. They're trying to sell you a product.
Get them on here.
They're trying to sell a product. Here's the thing. It's the same thing with the social media companies. It's the same thing with any very large company.
This is your anti-capitalist rant in another form, though, isn't it?
Sure, it's my anti-capitalist rant.
Being exploited by big companies.
It's my anti-exploitation rant. You can call it the anti-capitalist rant. That's fine. But their interest is not in giving you healthy food. Their interest is in making money. Now, we can, in some ways, regulate so that their interest in making money can align better with our interest in having healthy food. There are also other ways and other systems for giving people.
What's wrong? What is wrong with the fact is that some very clever capitalist and pharmacist has created these fantastic drugs which have the most incredible reactions. Right? Why don't we simply face up to that we've been discussing this kind of thing, whether they're bad foods, they're idle, or for whatever reason, for as long, right? I know this has come as a surprise to you. I'm older than both of you, right? I have been listening to this now for at least 40 or 50 years. Why don't we accept there's been a miracle? We are now going to give this drug to...
and there are now pilots being sampled in the NHS, and I hope that they work and they are good. But it doesn't take away from the fact that we shouldn't be having unhealthy food. The nutritional content of our food is going down and has been going down now for quite a long time. That should be a problem regardless of whether we've got a miracle drug or not.
I honestly have to ask you, where is the proof of that?
In a vast amount of academic literature. There's journal after journal after journal that show that this is the case. This is not a fringe thing. This is the absolute mainstream position. Let's take bread for example, right? Part of the reason why some stomach problems that people have now and gluten intolerance and so on is because a lot of what you have as bread isn't bread. It's an industrial product that masquerades as bread. It's much worse in the US because regulations are different. If we aren't having good food, there's going to be negative health outcomes.
Right. Well, why don't you both accept that there's been a miracle?
We're not opposing your miracle. We're not opposing your miracle. We want to do more.
How about we end it on saying that both are true? Ozempic and the other obesity-tackling drugs are part of the solution, but we've also got to look at what we eat, because if we have both bad food and lots of drugs, we're probably not going to do ourselves any good. I was. Thank you so much, Kelvin and James. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock on Dewbs & Co.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another cold one out there this evening. Is going to be a hard frost by morning across much of the country. Further snow coming in across northern Scotland. Strong winds means blizzards as the snow peppers through the Northern Isles. Easing for a time here, but spreading down into the mainland of Scotland. We could see several centimetres in some places, and with the showers further west and temperatures tumbling, that may well lead to some icy conditions for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. Largely dry for England and Wales. Clear skies means it will be a cold start to Friday. The strong winds really blowing in the showers over northern Scotland through the night and still into the morning, so a Met Office snow and ice warning in place here, say several centimetres in some locations. Further west, it's more rain at low levels that we'll see, but with temperatures close to freezing, it could be icy over western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, even into northwest England as the showers come in here. Elsewhere, it's a frosty but generally sunny start to Friday. As we go through the day, I think we'll see the snow showers easing a little bit. A mixture of rain and sleet showers coming into Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England. Still some snow flurries coming into northeastern parts of Scotland. Still very windy here as well. And that wind really bringing a chill. A few scattered showers for North Wales, but a good chunk of the Midlands, South Wales, southern England, eastern England staying dry. Feeling cold though, particularly in that wind in the east. Temperatures in single figures. Another frosty night on Friday night. Again, potentially quite icy on Saturday morning. Again, a good chunk of the country looking dry and fine, but a change down to the southwest weather system moving in. That'll bring some rain initially, but as this weather system hits the colder air, we could see some heavy snow for a time on Saturday. Probably not lasting too long across the south, but as it spreads into the Midlands, Wales, northern England, parts of Scotland, that snow could really build up as we head into Sunday. Freezing rain is an extra hazard as well, something to keep an eye on this weekend.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems a couple of miles north of Newcastle in Tyne and Wear do continue for the A189, which remains shut in Dudley and Westmore after a water main burst just south of the A19. Emergency repair works continue. On the M1 in Derbyshire, 2 out of the 3 lanes are closed northbound from the Tibshells services up to junction 29. That's the A617 Chesterfield-Mansfield exit. Of course, recovery works underway following an accident involving 2 cars. It's happened in the roadworks, so it's even slower. Long queues to start before junction 28 at the A38. In Cheshire, south of Wilmslow, the A34 remains shut between Never Alderley and Alderley Edge because of flooding. Many roads in Greater Manchester are closed because of flooding in Handforth and Platt Bridge and Delph. And buses in for Transport for Wales trains between Llandudno Junction and Blaenau Festiniog after a tree fell on the line. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me.